Thank you so much for inviting us along. What we wanted to really focus on today was looking at how we take those into the institutional pieces and join them up with the bottom, so top down, bottom up. We're working through really looking at that university level approach, then focusing more on embedding sustainability in teaching before focusing on the benefits, the challenges, and what's next, what are we going to do next. The institution, very similar to probably many other institutions, embedded the SDGs, United Sustainable Development Goals, into our 2030 strategy. That would be ranging from activities in research, education, right through to leadership promoting the SDGs in general communications. It was also backed up by a net zero plan which came out. So the focus was really about bringing this aspiration forward and connect it with our student body, our staff body. The problem was we didn't really know what was going on. We could easily point out specific examples of really good practice, programs, modules, which were absolutely fantastic, but we really didn't have a full picture of what was going on across the entire university. So similar, I suppose, to what was happening in some programs, some modules, where they mapped those directly to the SDGs, we took a full institutional approach from the outside looking in and mapped across all 2,400 modules. Now, we did it in a way that we didn't take the subject experts. What we did was we took it as outsiders. So what would our students see? What would we see? How hard was it to actually get that information? And it was not easy. I mean, my hair has gone grey doing this. But it was really, really important that we took what we wanted to do at an institutional level and connected it to what was happening on the ground at that time. It gave us data, it gave us a dashboard, it gave us a really clear picture across the entire institution of what was going on. But it also gave us a way to track progress, monitor our institutional alignment, look at what was happening here and why wasn't it happening here, or was it happening but it just wasn't being called out. So it really looked at raising the visibility across the institution. And this allowed us to really look at how we needed to embed in our policies, our systems, our institutional commitments, into our academic support for staff, and into our student learning opportunities, what we needed to do at top level to make it happen and make it easier for the bottom level. So looking at the institutional perspective around policies and systems, one of the things, and you've heard it here today, is staff do not have time to put this in. Unless it's part of a module which you're already teaching, it's really hard to encourage it to be added into something which is possibly aligning with it, but maybe hasn't looked at it in detail. So we started looking at the promotion criteria for staff, academic profiles, and having it called out so that they could actually say, yes, I am doing this. I can say I'm doing it. I'm getting recognition for it. Second thing we've done is we've looked at our systems. So whilst we knew the Sustainable Development Goals were being addressed in the curriculum, there was no way for us to track it. We couldn't say across the institution, for SDG 4, this is what we are doing. These are the modules and this is what's happening within those modules. It was incredibly difficult to get that big picture. So we built into our computer systems, which now allows us to track it. We can identify clearly which modules are supportive of the SDGs, which are inclusive, which are focused. And then it allows us to say, okay, well, we've got 40% of our modules. These are the ones we really want to target and look at. How can we work with staff to do that? We also introduced a local sustainability action plan at school level. And within that, which allows schools to look more holistically across all of the areas within their school, research and teaching was called out in that so that they could identify really clear goals, targets that they wanted to do. And one of those will be around developing curriculum, training staff, supporting staff, creating time to do this. And then we looked at that module integration, Could we, well, it's not could we have gone ahead and already done it. So when a member of staff is creating a new module or doing a module amendment form or a module review form, the SDGs are there within the paperwork, within the documentation. So before they start kind of developing that and submitting it through to academic affairs for approval, it's there, it's already called out for staff. So we've embedded it at that level. The next part was around that academic support. What can we do for our academic colleagues and how can we support them in embedding the sustainability development goals into their curriculum? So this is, bearing in mind we're in a 5-year plan, we've got 5 more years to go, but one of the ones which we're working on at the moment is developing an ESD Foundations programme. The people quite often still think this is environmental, rather than thinking of the other aspects. So what we wanted to do was go out to staff, talk about what the SDGs are and how they could embed that into their curriculum, into their teaching. We also have up and running now a CEDA certified leading ESD in the curriculum programme, which is a 12-week programme, and Beatrice is going to talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. And we've developed our community of practice, bringing together staff from across the university to look at that interdisciplinary collaboration. What can we do together? What can we make work? So whether it's bringing our marketing students together with our healthcare students, looking at healthcare, community healthcare projects. How do we market that? How do we get that out into the community? Whereas healthcare students, that's not their area of priority. They're not being taught that. And marketing students need a fantastic example, a real-life example that they can take forward. So that's kind of our thought behind our community of practice. We've also looking at expanding our living labs on campus and taking those, we currently do them on campus, within the community, working with the Belfast City Council, looking at Northern Ireland scale, looking internationally through COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning Programmes, connecting in with universities overseas, that our students can share their research with students in America, for example, and that they can work collaboratively there. We're also raising the profile for our students to say this degree programme embeds sustainability. This is what we're doing, because quite often we get the call back from students saying, no, we do nothing at all around sustainability, which is just not true. It's just not being called out. And that's part of what we're doing with staff, but also within our systems as well. And then moving towards Green Comp for a lot of our training programmes, our student development programmes, working with staff as well. So from an institutional point of view, we could not have built any of those and built them so that they work for staff unless we knew what was going on the ground at the moment. So one of the most valuable things I cannot understate was the value of looking at the entire institution as a whole. What was happening at modular level, at programme level, as a whole institution. What we went on, one programme which Beatrice is going to go on and talk about, is how it's now been embedded within the curriculum. And that's around our leading sustainability development, sustainable development in the curriculum programme. That's a 12-week training course. We have 4 inbuilt assessments. It was developed and piloted in 2023, and we received full accreditation from CEDA in 2024. The idea behind this programme is really looking at our programme leads, the key people who can influence others, how our programmes are developed, and then what we can do within our modules to build those back up again. Sometimes it's just a small tweak. It's just about taking a slightly side-on view. Sometimes it's taking a programme in physics or mathematics where academics were saying, absolutely not, no, it has no relevance to us at all. And they went out as one of our champions at the end of the course. So it's a fantastic experience and fantastic to see what happens within that. This has been aligned with the UNESCO competencies. So we're kind of doing a combination between Green Comp and the UNESCO competencies to look at that futures thinking, the systems thinking, and working with staff, giving them time each week to look at how they can actually integrate it. And then they have the systems behind the scenes which is supporting them all the way through that. Beatrice, can I hand over?
Thank you, Natalie. So I realise I'm standing between everybody and their lunch, so I'll try to keep this brief. But now that Natalie has given you an idea of what we're doing from the top down in the university, I'm going to talk about it from my perspective as a lecturer in the classroom and what I've been doing from the bottom up. I've been teaching sustainable energy modules for the past 13 years or so I am on board with sustainability. But you say the words transformative pedagogy to me and I get a bit twitchy and nervous. So I signed up to do this course. I figured I pretty much needed it. And I found the course to be really beneficial. I think, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, one of the values was it gave me time. It made me sit down and think, what do I want to teach? Why do I want to teach it? And how is the best way to go about teaching that? So I think, as Laura mentioned earlier, we want students to have the technical skills. We want them to have the knowledge of sustainability, but we also want them to have the commitment to sustainability. We want them to go out and actually use and apply those skills, not just think about sustainability as some sort of abstract thing that they have to do. And this is where the course really helped me to reflect on my own practice. As an example, I would teach students about carbon footprinting. And my focus has always been, are they doing their sums right? Can they calculate their grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour correctly? But when I step back, why do I want them to do that? Well, obviously they need the technical proficiency, but I want them to think about their own carbon footprint and ways that they can reduce it. And I want them, when they graduate, to go into the workplace and work within their organisations to reduce their organisation's carbon footprints. So I really had to think, okay, it's not just the knowledge. I have to emotionally engage these students. And that was a bit revelationary for me. I'm an engineer, I like the numbers, but now I have to get down and dirty with the feelings with these students. So distilling it down from an engineer's perspective, what that means for me is keeping it real. It's giving those students the real world examples, giving them the opportunity to get up close with the application of sustainability in the real world and helping them to practice those skills as soon as they learn them. So here's an example of some things that we've put in place in a module in Sustainable Energy Systems, which is taught at MSc level. Now, we would have had quite a few bits and pieces of ESD within the module already, but over the past year, we've really tried to be more consistent with embedding it across every topic we teach within that module. So, a few examples. Every year I would have given a rather dull lecture on geothermal energy. So this year I changed it to a short pre-recording, and then in the bottom picture there you can see one of our new buildings on the Queen's site. That has a borehole field, so students get to see that. They get to see how that ground source energy is integrated with the solar panels in the roof. They go into the control room, they look at the heat exchangers, they look at the energy management systems, and they also learn about the other aspects of sustainability that are taken into the building design, like native planting, bird boxes and so on. When we take it to the classroom, up on the top right there, we've brought in classroom demonstrations. So the wee car that you see there is a fuel cell vehicle at miniature size, and it has an electrolyser on the back. So students can see the electrolysis of water happening, the hydrogen being produced, and the car then moving. Other aspects, we have a series of guest lectures from industry, from government, and we've started making use of our postdoctoral researchers. They are brilliant. They come in and they talk about their research with such enthusiasm, and that rubs off on the students. And the final thing I'll mention here is trying to build in space for discussion for the students. So we still need to teach them the sums and how to do those calculations. But then it's putting in the time for them to think about what those numbers actually mean and discuss amongst themselves what the implications of their findings are. Now, feedback from the students this year on these measures has been overwhelmingly positive. They've said that it really helps them understand the content more deeply. Only a couple of slides left. And another module I've been involved in, or I was involved in for over 10 years, was the final year project modules, which is run over 2 semesters on an individual basis. After COVID, we found one of the problems was students felt quite isolated in the module and they were lacking perspective. And we also we're really only looking at sustainability, to be honest, as a tick box exercise in that module. So we tried to address both those problems sort of hand in hand. And what we did was we now asked students as part of their project planning at the outset of the module to incorporate the considerations of ethics and sustainability as part of that project planning documentation. And midway through the project, then the students have a workshop whereby they review their project plans through peer-to-peer, through peer-to-peer learning and discussions with their classmates. Now, it's only an hour-long workshop, but I have never delivered an hour-long lecture on project management where there has been such energy and engagement in the room. So from my perspective, I can really see the changes from bringing in those ESD approaches. So benefits and challenges, I think the ambition of UNESCO has been mentioned by some of the speakers previously, and that's where we want to go with this. As I've mentioned, I see big improvements in student engagement in the classroom. The students really enjoy discussing with each other and learning from each other, and they learn well from each other, and they pay attention on site visits. And from my perspective in the classroom, I find that the lectures that I have converted to a fully ESD approach are much more enjoyable to teach. Big challenge is time. It's time to plan this, to organise it, to think and to reflect on it. And that is challenging. So what's next for us? Well, plenty of initiatives going on across the university. I'll just mention 3 here as a taster. From Natalie's side, from the institutional end of things, Natalie's putting in place specific discipline resources for staff to make it easier for staff to pick up on elements of ESD that they can incorporate into their teaching. From my side, I know there's a body of work to be done in improving how we assess sustainability and how we do it properly, taking ESD into account. And meeting in the middle, top down, bottom up, are the living labs. And I'm quite excited about this because we want to use the university estate for discipline-specific projects, but then move out to look at, cross-discipline, inter-faculty, and also moving out into the community. So that's all really I have to say. Thank you very much for listening.